Japan Airlines Flight 123 crash. It is the world's deadliest single aircraft disaster which occurred in the evening of August 12, 1985. 35 years have already passed, however, many bereaved, aviation experts and researchers, attorneys are requiring to the Japanese government a full information disclosure, seeking the truth of the crash. Official crash investigation report says the crash was caused by improper repairs of the aircraft's pressure bulkhead. However, from right after the disaster took place, there are many people who doubt it and believe in an involvement of the Self-Defense Forces, SDF, and Japanese government, which are hiding the truth. This was not an unfortunate accident, but the most unforgivable crime committed by the government in Japan's post-war period. JAL Flight 123 was accidentally involved in SDF missile test and had its tail fin destroyed. SDF, in fear of a reveal of this fatal error, interrupted JAL-123's emergency landing, obliging it to fly toward Mount Hausdaka and finally shot it down. This hard-to-believe fact has been claimed by many researchers from the beginning, but often considered as a conspiracy theory. Tohko Aoyama. The disaster was gradually withering from people's memories over 30 years. However, Tohko Aoyama, a non-fiction writer who made consistent researches with academic approach, gave a new momentum for the necessity of reinvestigation. Aoyama, at the time of the crash, was working for Japan Airlines as a flight attendant, and lost 15 colleagues including her supervisor. This urged her to start investigation on the crash. One of her books published in 2017, New Facts of JAL-123 Crash, became a bestseller, marking over 100,000 copies. She is taking a leading role at movement for seeking the truth of the incident. Symposium for Information Disclosure and Rights to Know, Doubts on Official Documents over JAL-123 Crash. On July 16, 2019, an academic symposium was held at Waseda University, Tokyo, with an aim for requesting to the Japanese government information disclosure and reinvestigation of the JAL-123 crash. At the event, reports were made by Hiroshi Miyake, an attorney specialized in legal path of information disclosure, Takuya Morinaga, a leading economist, and Tohko Aoyama, the JAL-123 researcher introduced earlier. Suzanne Bailey Yukawa, a British widow who lost her Japanese husband at the crash, Akihisa Yukawa, also joined the event and appealed the necessity of collaboration with overseas bereaved for raising international awareness. Outline of JAL-123 crash explained by Tohko Aoyama. This video introduces a summary of her speech made at the symposium. You can find original text in English on the web. Japanese translation was done by the channel Truth JAL-123 Crash. On July 16, the Waseda University Faculty of Law and the Waseda University Comparative Law Research Institute co-hosted an academic symposium asking for information disclosure of the Japan Airlines Flight 123. For the first time, UK bereaved Susan Bailey Yukawa came to Japan and issued a statement asking for a reinvestigation with Japanese bereaved. Professor Christopher P. Hood at Cardiff University in the UK also sent a video message. The keynote speech was held by Mr. Hiroshi Miyake, a member of the Cabinet Office Public Document Management Act, the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications Information Disclosure System member, Vice Chairman of the Bar Association and Chairman of the Board. I also mentioned the necessity of the reinvestigation. The legal path to reinvestigation has finally come to light. Now I would like to share with you overseas people about the Nikko 123 flight crash and the story that is not written in the official accident investigation report. On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 crashed in Ueno Village, Gunma Prefecture, and 520 people were killed. This is the world's largest single airplane crash still now. 22 of the victims were foreign nationals, including the United Kingdom, India, the United States, Korea, China, and Italy. At the time I worked for JAL as a stewardess, belonged to the same group of the flight attendants who encountered the accident, but I was relieved because of the duties for an international flight. 34 years have passed since then. I got married and retired, put myself in the education world, then got a doctoral degree from the University of Tokyo. In the meanwhile, I have always questioned the cause of the crash of the Nikko 123 and continued my research. As a result, I wrote 4 books. One of them, New Facts of the Nikko 123 Crash, close to the truth of the eyewitness accounts, breaks through 100,000 copies, thereby making the general public aware of the cause of the accident different from the accident investigation report. After a 34 years survey, I was convinced that the crash of the Nikko 123 was not an accident but an incident. According to the accident investigation report of the official announcement at that time, the aircraft pressure bulkhead that had been damaged by a hardtail hit against runway in the landing at Osaka Airport in 1978, was repaired in the incomplete manner by Boeing. Its bulkhead broke again in the operation of the Nikko 123 due to a repair error, and its amount of pressurized air in the cabin darted out and accumulated inside of the vertical fin, finally blew up the top corner of the fin with pressure. However, despite all this, the Japanese judiciary did not prosecute anyone for this reason. In other words, no one had any responsibility for the death of 520 people. It was written that the reason for the crash is that Boeing made a repair mistake and Japan Airlines missed it. But even after the accident, Japan Airlines purchased Boeing's airplanes in following year, one after another. Not only JAL but all rivals of JAL and Japanese Self-Defense Force also purchased aircrafts under the intention of the government, Prime Minister Yasuhiro Nakasone. As a result, Boeing's sales in Japan were the highest, which resulted in 520 victims. In 2015, news reported that most of the vertical fin and tails constructions blew off were still in the sea. Despite the direct cause of oneself, it is still sunk to the seabed 160 meters of Sagami Bay, below the flight route. This is the origin of the accident. Nevertheless, the Japan Transport Safety Commission, which is in the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism, refused the wishes of the bereaved and rejected to pull them up from the seabed for the reinvestigation. It was natural to do so because of a lot of doubts and an unconvincing non-prosecution. I will briefly explain why they refused so much, based on the facts. The accident investigation report disregarded all the testimonies of many witnesses. According to them, immediately after the emergency happened on JAL 123, the 2 Phantoms that were launched urgently tracked the JAL aircraft, and near the crash point, local children said a large airplane and 2 small airplanes are chasing. They were sure to look the situation. In the ultra-low altitude flight of JAL 123, it was observed that an elliptical thing like a red airplane was stuck near the fuselage. In the vicinity of the crash site, adults also witnessed a bright red small plane flying. A non-duty SDF member witnessed that 2 SDF Phantom aircrafts were flying in an unusual situation, and this was described in the police report too. I interviewed the chief of Ueno village of a crash site, Tohko Aoyama. He said that he called the central government many times for crashing in his village. Nevertheless, coverage of the unknown continued throughout the night. There was a big fire at the crash site on the mountain and there were many helicopters on it. It had been witnessed that they were going back and forth and raising and lowering things. According to Mr. Antonucci's testimony of the US military, the crash site was identified in 15 minutes after the accident, so I went for relief, but the Japanese rescue team came and ordered a return. However, he knew a report next morning that it was unknown all night, and he was hampered to say nothing. If the 2 Phantoms were flying with JAL 123 at a bright time before the crash, the location was identified and reports that the crash site was unknown all night would not be held. In response to this comment, the SDF's official announcement said that 1 minute after the crash, we sent out 2 Phantoms, but we did do nothing before that. We had not had even one fly. So what did the Japanese government and the self-defense forces do all night without saving the passengers? I also briefly report scientific findings. I examined the remains, a few rocky blocks, collected at the crash point with the University Research Institute. As a result, it was found that the material was made of duralumin and was the remnant of JAL123. Further, when black deposits were analyzed, a large amount of benzene ring, sulfur, chloroform were detected. Jet fuel used by JAL was kerosene JTA1, which was a good product of high purity refined from kerosene. So why is a large amount of gasoline component benzene ring and sulfur detected in the crash site? This is a biggest question. Naturally, there was no gasoline on the product, also no sulfur component in this mountain. Furthermore, why was the non-load chloroform attached? According to the detailed data for the condition of the body that was obtained and analyzed by the autopsy doctor, 1/3 of the bodies were abnormal carbonized, 1/3 of them were complete bodies, and another 2,000 fragmental parts of bodies. The plane crashed on the summit of the ridge called Osutaka. No one was broken into 4 parts, and one of them, the E compartment just in front of the rear pressure partition where the 4 survivors were sitting, slipped off from the summit and fell to a point completely invisible from the summit. It was deep bushes of trees. Their tympanic membranes were normal despite the survivor experiencing a sudden decompression as the vertical tail blew off. The 4 survivors were listening to a large number of voices and encouraging each other. However, the helicopters flying above did not rescue them. According to the doctor, 100 people must be alive if they were discovered immediately after the crash. In the crash site near the summit, the flames were rising until morning, and according to a local fire brigade who accidentally found as survivors, it was full of gasoline and tar odors. Why was the smell of non-load dangerous goods gasoline full? Tar was not a cargo. What did the existence of the SDF helicopters witness around the scene all night tell you? By the way, the components of the weapon fuel, flamethrower, possessed by the SDF members were gasoline and tar. According to the autopsy doctor, there were many charred remains, those completely carbonized on both the back and front near the summit. In addition, there were neither an engine nor a wing part, as storage located for kerosene fuel tank, in the vicinity. Carbonized to an extent that was clearly different from other aircraft accidents and traces of double burns. The remaining fuel for about 1 hour flight range burned for 11 hours. The body must be burned twice. There was evidence that firearms were used, and material of the fuel promoter was discovered, because of a component different from kerosene. There is a shower toward evening every day at the crash site. The humidity is 75%, and Summer Mountain is not particularly likely to be a forest fire. In addition, it is obvious that summer clothes are not suitable for burning for a long time. The thick human body does not carbonize to bone, even if the surface is burnt and black. Why did you carbonize the bones? All of the above are interviews with police doctor, local people, former SDF personnel, and transport minister at the time, Tohko Aoyama, Secretary of Defense Agency at the time, Koichi Kato. Research were conducted at the Professional Research Institute. The answer is that the SDF had some involvement in the crash. In fact, daily newspaper reports for a week before the crash were articles on domestic missile development and missile test success. On the day of the accident, the self-defense ship Matsuyuki was in public testing and was under missile testing. This year, we are requesting disclosure of information, including a 34-year-old live voice recorder and the genuine flight recorder, to clarify these in accordance with the law. There should be no problem even if the materials and information are disclosed to the bereaved, since Japan Airlines and Boeing, as the parties to the official cause of the accident, have officially apologized and acknowledged. The government is obliged to answer the bereaved questions seriously. The reinvestigation is natural because it has not been prosecuted in the past. However, the Accident Investigation Committee has refused to release materials for 34 years long, with citing various reasons. This is the actual condition of Japan. Japanese side bereaved family members are seeking to disclose information with their bereaved overseas, and formally request a reinvestigation regarding this unclear incident. There should be no reason for anyone to refuse this. There are many military involvement in what is considered to be an aircraft accident whose cause is unclear. This may be happening around the world. For that, legal maintenance is indispensable in the international framework in the future, and British bereaved and Japanese bereaved are aiming for it.